We're going to sit in small circles and read the names of the folks who are buried here. About 5 years ago, Eddie Becker, who's our documentarian today, and I and some other neighbors, I know some of you were there from the start, we were anxious to stop a city project that was going to move major amounts of earth in this park. And so we became obstructionists at that point and said, this is a cemetery. The only way we knew it was a cemetery was that we knew some old maps said it was a cemetery. So what is a cemetery is everything all the way to Adams Mill Road, everything you see here, everything into the National Zoo, which is down a slope and just across the road there, everything to this alley, and then everything to Rock Creek that way. This was a giant cemetery. It was about 7 acres. This area over here was the much smaller quarter-acre Quaker cemetery. So we're meeting today at the place where the Quaker cemetery and the African American cemeteries meet. And that wasn't on purpose, it's just that the tent fell off the hand truck here. So
instant karma.
Instant fate, instant karma. So anyway, that's the logic we'll see in that. The Walter Pierce Archaeology Project is being headed by Mark Mack of Howard University. He was the laboratory director and is the laboratory director of the New York Burial Ground Project, and we consider that project our sister. It had a lot of false starts and bad things happen that we've been able to avoid by way of benefiting from their experience. And this cemetery is almost exactly the same size as the African Burial Ground was in Lower Manhattan, and the same density of bodies. In that case, 400 bodies were removed. In our case, this archaeology project never digs. We find, we protect. And today we go to the third stage. This is the 120th year since the last burial in the cemetery. Jenny Johnson, who was just a small infant, was buried on June 17th, 1890. And so we're marking the 120th year. It may be the first time that many of these names are spoken out loud since they were actually buried here. So when we have descendants here today, we have members of the distinguished Shorter family. How many other people think they might have descendants here? Mr. Johnson, you might. We have plenty of Johnsons. David, you might. We're your spiritual ancestors. I think we all share that sense. But what we did for the last year, those of us who are historic researchers, including Barbara Bates, who's standing there with the hat on, we hand-searched 75,000 DC death certificates for the period 1870 to 1890. And these are copies of what death certificates look like. They're more like 8 by 10. But they all say where someone was buried. And this place was called Mount Pleasant Plains Cemetery, or Free Young Men's Cemetery, or Young Men's Cemetery. So anytime we saw that on the place of burial, we took that name and made a list, and we will have a database available to the public, so you can look up who was buried here, how old they were, when they died, when they came to DC, where they died, which is often their home address, and we see families connected together that way through the addresses where their place of death occurred. And we often find exciting things that someone served in the military. Frank Smith is here today from the African American Civil War Memorial at Vermont Avenue and U Street. We are looking at names right now of veterans, and we've found at least 27 veterans buried in this cemetery, including Samuel Stevenson of the Massachusetts 54th. If you ever saw the movie Glory, that was about the Massachusetts 54th. We have one of those people here. We have a lot of people from the 1st Regiment that mustered in DC. And we're continuing to look, and Barbara Bates, again, the researcher, has really done a bang-up job on that. So shall we get started reading the names?
Benjamin Minor, he was born free.
Wow. Henry Hughes.
Three Naylor.
James Robertson.
Unknown.
Samuel Stevenson, age 44. He fought in the Civil War, 54th Mass Infantry.
Kitty Page,
3 years old. Edward Kent.
Oh, Amelia Edmondson. She was the mother of 6 Pearl passengers.
From Southwest 77. They were caught. There's books on it. It's on the Southwest. The Pearl incident. And it's on the Southwest Heritage Trail. Hannah Joseph Harrod, Thornton Kendall,
James Small.
Denise Pitcher, Frank McFarland, Barry Nelson 2, Jesse Johnson 10, James
mother and sisters in 1838.
James Wood 1, William
Lavinia Lee was a dressmaker, 24 years old.
Charles Myers was freed in 1843.
Yay!
That's before the Civil War.
There were lots of freedmen before the Civil War.
One, Jane Burris, 80. She came to D.C. from Virginia during the Civil War.
Eliza Allen, age 23. James Henry Howell, age 4. I have another one, Ellen Jenkins, age 80. She was a nurse.
It's a 2-year-old Gracie Bowley who was born in the state of Maine.
Job Moulton.
Walter Jones, age 1. Martin Fraser, age 29.
78, a fishman.
Eliza Miles, age
Fishmonger,
55.
wow. Janetta Turner.
John Brown. Corey Carter.
A child of John and
Thomas Lloyd.
Shelton Beck.
William H. Fonsel.
Chester
John Stevens.
Virginia Harris, Hawkins, Mary Chapman.
I have one, Samuel Maddox, 11. He was a schoolboy.
Clarence D. Williams, 8 years old.
33 years old.
Emily Dorsey, 65. She had a candy store.
Edmondson.
Age 80, Martha Ellen Edmondson. She was the wife of Pearl passenger Richard Edmondson. And I have one, Harriet Turner, age 82. She was a ladies' nurse.
Sanitza Wilson, 38. George Brooks, 5. Julia Thomas, 30. John Blackwell, 53. Irina Gatlin, infant. Callie White, infant. 67, he was a blacksmith. Charles
Hanson Dorsey. He was a man of all work.
Interesting.
Jack of all trades.
It's a man of all work, like Jack of all trades.
Joseph Lloyd, 56. He was a wood sawyer.
Mary Ann Robinson. I have one, Jane Taylor, age 100.
I have one, Alex Jefferson, 20. He was a bartender born in Virginia.
Henrietta Smallwood, 78. She was freed in 1823.
Henry Gray, 38. He was a hostler. Richard Griffin, 37. He was a laborer from North Carolina.
Edmondson, age 80. She was the wife of Pearl passenger Richard Edmondson.
John
Oh,
Lewis,
right. The Edmondson.
Right.
fought in the Civil War.
Blakely, 41. William Henry. Lottie Spencer, 1. Washington Butler, 46. John Edwards Jones. Oh,
Asbury Methodist.
What's his name? George and Mary Richards.
Co-founder of Asbury.
How old was he?
80.
80. Age 28. He was a seamstress from Virginia.
William Branson, 42, a coachman.
Robert Bacchus, 30. He was a steward on a ship. Bessie Drew.
Nancy Porter, 50. Mary Glasser.
George Brown. Ellen Brown. Terry. Charles Terry. Vincent Johnson.
Annie Bell, 3 years old. Martha Madison, 32 years old. Annie Black, 1 year old. Earl Randolph, and
So we have Steve Coleman here as well, and Frank Smith. Steve is with Washington Parks and People. I don't know whether you want to say anything, Steve? Or...
Well, yeah, I'm very grateful to Mark Mack and to Mary Belcher and all the people who are making the memory become part of the dream. And I just want to say that this really is not just about the past or even just about this magic moment right now. It is about our future, and we have a chance to breathe this story into the future of this place in a way that it will never be forgotten. So Parks and People is leading an effort to produce a permanent master plan for this park and this site and the cemeteries to ensure that there is a protocol in place about whether you can dig and if you can dig and where and how and when and with whom, and we're going to have a permanent commemoration of this so that this is never again an unmarked grave. But there's a lot of wonderful ideas about how to connect this park into Rock Creek as it was historically for Native Americans. And so we were looking forward to working with the National Park Service and the zoo and other partners. There's talk about encouraging Metro to move their turnaround and create an expanded entry to the park so it doesn't look like someone's backyard anymore and it becomes the great place that we all know it is. So there will be young people working to assist community engagement on this all summer, and we encourage you guys to speak up, think of your ideas of what should be happening as part of that permanent plan for the future of the park. Thank you.
Well, this is sort of a coming home party for me. I used to live in that building right there. I was living there when they first tried to turn this into a condominium, and we stopped that years ago and launched a political career that lasted almost 20 years in this town. So, and actually was on the council when we named this park with my folks before Walter Pierce. But now I run the African American Civil War Museum. Let me just say, as we start to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, we are going to start planning a national GIS mapping system where we map all of the sites in this country where these African American soldiers were recruited, all the contraband camps, all the battles and skirmishes, and the places where they're buried. 80% of them lived and came home and they scattered all over the United States. So they're buried in almost every state in the union. So it's going to be a great new resource actually tied to the Civil War and of course the ending of slavery and the saving of this country as one nation. This is just one part of it for us here. This is close to home, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I also might just add that I'm a member of Goodwill Baptist Church, which is right up the street here. And one of the founders of this part of this burial site was a pastor at Greater First Baptist Church in Georgetown, which is a church from which Goodwill ascended. We started out over there years ago, long before I ever moved to Washington. Both of them are still in existence. The Greater First Baptist Georgetown is still at 31st and Dumbarton. And Goodwill, of course, is over there. You're sitting in chairs that come from Goodwill today. And I have two reenactors with me. Pat Tyson, who, we have these people who, talking about the Civil War tells old stories unless you find a way to make it relevant to the day. And one of the ways we make it relevant, we have young people do first-person presentations about these people that they represent, and all our reenactors do the same.
My name is Marquette Milton. I just graduated out of high school at Eastern Senior High School. Right now I'm looking forward to becoming a reenactment Civil War warrior cadet. As you can see, I'm with Mr. Dr. Smith. He brought me here to do an exhibition for the souls who died here, that was buried here in the 1800s. So basically I'm just here to bring the spirit of freedom. The whites back then, we needed the blacks, so we kind of helped end the war. It was like war is based off freedom, bringing the unions together. Wasn't about black or white, who's better than the other. Wasn't about slaves. It was about bringing this whole country together as a union.
Could the descendants raise their hand, people who believe they are descended from people here? We have members of the Shorter family who were the backbone of the Colored Union Benevolent Association, which founded the cemetery. We have Dawn Young of the Edmondson family. If the Shorters were the backbones, the Edmondsons were the lifeblood. And we all know about the Edmondsons. They're here on our very meager visual display today. They were part of the Pearl escape attempt in 1848. 6 Edmondson siblings were on that ship. The ship was captured near the Potomac, where the Potomac meets the bay. And 77 enslaved people were brought back here to Washington and put in jail. It ignited the pro-slavery mobs of Washington, but it inflamed the passions of every abolitionist around the world. So they sacrificed by not succeeding in their attempt and being thrown in jail, but they served a larger cause, and we often see that in struggles in this country. So we have to look at the heroics of all that and say, thank God. Thank God for them. And the mother is buried here, Amelia Edmondson, and 2 of the Pearl passengers, Samuel Edmondson, or Ephraim Edmondson and Richard Edmondson. And we have a couple here named Luke and Sarah Carter as well, who helped hide Pearl passengers when they were waiting to board the ship. I would like to introduce Mark Neck, who's just disappeared.
Well, he's right here with her.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, this is Mark.
I think Mark deserves all our heartfelt thanks for all the hard work he's put in. And in the course of his many labors, he had a baby, he and his wife Cindy. And this is Amira.
Yeah, Amira.
What is her middle name? Amira Yvonne Knapp. And this is her first event.
It really does my heart good to see everybody out here, because we've been out here for the last 4 years. And I see it as a service to the community, but also a service to our shared history. So that's why we've been out here. And the final report will be done soon. But this place has to be protected for the future as well. So we all need to work together. So it's really good to see everybody out. Thank you.
And I've been asked whether these names are going to be online. These names are going to be online in the form of a database that will not only tell you everybody's occupation that we had, we just sort of peppered little bits of information. We have a lot more information about most of these people. We'll also give you their address where their death occurred, so in many cases you can see families by the common last name at a common address. This is all part of our final reporting on the archaeological project. And everybody who came here today, it was so important what we just did. I hope everybody feels a little bit of a thrill.
I just want to say to Mary and all of those who are here that are responsible for this, thank you very much. We really appreciate what you're doing. For our young people, we're depending upon you to keep this history and to build on what you know. Do your research. Don't allow someone to tell you what it's all about. Do the research and do it. I just so appreciate people like Cultural Tourism that's done the Heritage Trails, and they've studied and gotten some of the history together for us. But we really must do our own research and find out who we are, why this country is the great country it is. Because there are a lot of people coming here from other countries that don't understand America. They understand the fruits of it, but not what the basis and the root of it is. And that's our job, is to teach this next generation what it's all about. I'd just like to say that I portray the character of Hallie Quinn Brown, born in 1850, around 1850, they're not sure. I passed away in 1949. I was an educator, an author, an elocutionist, and a community activist. I was presented before, well, I should say that I went south and taught on the plantation when the Civil War ended, to teach children and adults how to assimilate into society, helping them get clothing and all. And my heart, they called me Miss Hallie. My heart so breaks when I see our young people walking around looking like they don't have any clothes. And yet, in my time, we were trying to clothe people, trying to give them the tools so that they could be the best that there is. Personally, I'm Patricia Tyson. I'm an alumnus of the Military Road School up in Northwest. Our school was born out of the Civil War, and we're connected with Fort Stevens. I invite you all to come to Fort Stevens Day, July 10th, where you'll see an exhibit on the school, you'll see an exhibit on the fort, you'll see an exhibit on Aunt Betty Thomas, who was known as the owner of Fort Stevens until her death. And also, our organization, the Military Road School Preservation Trust, is going to be putting out a CD on the contraband in Washington. Oh, wow. And it is exciting. I'm really excited about it. It will be ready by July 10th. Thank you.
Thank you.